this question is so much easier to answer when you're 25 than when you're 52. Like, cause it's like, the world is not, people are like, tell us what you do in 5 words. And you're like, well, once upon a time I was a little girl. And then, but yeah, I studied journalism.
Hey everyone, it is Tony Will. Oh my gosh, you guys are in for a treat today on Women In, and I cannot wait for you to meet my next guest. But before you meet her, let me tell you what you're listening to. Women In is a podcast that celebrates women from all walks of life and the people who uplift them. Each episode features incredible voices from my world, sharing stories that spark inspiration, challenge the status quo, and remind us that empowering women empowers everyone. This is a bold, curious, and uncensored space where disruption is welcome, forward thinking is encouraged, and change is the goal. I'm passionate about breaking down barriers, not just for us, but for the next generations. Whether our paths cross professionally or personally, these conversations matter. Let's dive in and celebrate the power of connection, growth, and the people who are shaping our world, and this woman is definitely one of them. Amy Stone is a media entrepreneur, storyteller, and founder of the Art of Imperfect Adulting, a growing media platform featuring long-form interviews that explore the messy, non-linear reality of building a life. Amy, welcome.
Hello. Hi.
Hi. It is such a pleasure to have you on Women In.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. So let's start with how you and I came into each other's lives. How did you and I meet?
How did we meet? We probably met because I have a pretty I have a pretty aggressive call for guests to join me in my platform. I very intentionally go out and ask once a month or so, like, hey, do you have a story to share? Come and pitch it to me. And I think that's how we may have initially connected.
It was. I was on your podcast, The Art of Imperfect Adulting, and I was drawn to it because I love the imperfection in humans and celebrating that. And that's just the title of your podcast, and that stood out to me. Is that something, and when you decided to name it such, and was it because you too see the beauty in the flawed?
So it's interesting because I think that other people celebrate the beauty of the imperfection a little bit more than I do. It's interesting when your own ideas are mirrored back to you by other people. So from my super cerebral, thinking about the idea, imperfection to me is the starting point. It's the reality. Everything else is the illusion, right? And so when we push for that view of perfection or that idea of how something is supposed to be or should be, it's like throwing water on a fire, putting the brakes on a car or a train. It's not possible, right? So before you can run a marathon or play a hockey game or bake a cake or, have a family or even a conversation, you have to actually be at the starting spot. And so for me, that's the message behind imperfect adulting, is that if you push back on the imperfection, all you're doing is creating resistance, because imperfection is really kind of all there is. That perfection thing is like a moving target. It's like, it doesn't actually exist. It's right. So you think that, perfection is being able to fire up the microphone or, develop the film. But as soon as you get there, the next thing is it just moves on its own.
What a great description, because success is like that, right? It's like It's a moving target. You use this word illusion, and I wrote it down because it was so it stuck out to me. Yeah. And I feel like a lot of us are living this, or, trying to put this illusion out there of who we want people to think we are. And women like you and I are like, hang on, let's ground ourselves in reality. And we don't have to pretend. And so what do you see when you use that word illusion? Is that what you're seeing?
A lot of times, yeah. And there's frustration from my side, which is very much rooted in the fact that I've never really been successful in portraying the illusion, right? Like that's never been something, my background is in journalism. It's like
Yep.
show up and be there, right? It was important to be there, whether your hair was wet or, you just had to be there in that moment. You didn't have the chance to like, rehearse it and get it right. And so that is very much the way I am. So I excel at doing things in the moment, but it may not, I've never been the person who can create that Instagram perfect, Pinterest, perfection. Do you remember? You and I are close in age. There was
Yeah.
Pinterest back in the day, which was not what it is exactly today. But people would post these like projects and things, and then we had like the real stuff, which was the Pinterest fails, which was like when you tried to make, the porcupine cake, and it turned out looking like a giant dog turd. Like it was, and so there is that back channel conversation, which is like, yeah, it's like we don't all wear makeup to sleep. Like if you judge yourself against, what people look like in the movies, you're never going to get there because that's not the way anything real is. So, honoring, so instead of celebrating, I live in sort of a space of really honoring the importance of the imperfection. And I think that aligns a lot with some of the work that you do, because that like deep internal reflection that is part of most people's recovery journey is the same thing. It's like the most honest person you'll ever meet in your life is the person who can no longer hide from their secrets. The homeless, guy who's honest about, I use the word guy just because there are so many more homeless men on the street, but it can happen to anybody. The person who can no longer hide from their imperfections is the most transparent person. It's like, I'm here, I have, I can't hide from it anymore. And nobody wants to, well, I shouldn't say nobody, most of us don't want to be homeless and on the street, but there's such power in not having to hide anything from anybody.
You're absolutely correct. And it is true, especially for me in recovery. It's like, and I'm
Right.
just who I am. And I often say it's because I put myself through the ringer, and I don't want other people to feel the way I did. But if they do, here's what's possible on the other side of it, by
Yeah.
talking about it and destigmatizing anything that's stigmatized, whether it's homelessness, addiction, whatever. There's so many
Yeah.
stigmas out there.
And the lesson that I think is so hard to learn, that is famous from recovery, but is true in so many transformations, is that giant hurdle of what's going to happen when people know the real story, right? Like, I don't want to tell people that I want to lose weight, or I don't want to tell people that I'm binge eating, or I don't want to tell people that I don't do this, or I don't want to tell people that I, don't know if I have the skills for this job. Like just really anything that we're afraid of people seeing. The weird synchrony is that the more experience you have with it, the more you realize that you are never going to get to the other side until you let people see it. It's like there's other people there, but you have to jump off the cliff before you can see them. And it's I don't know, it's a weird human thing. It's like, I tell the story of, I was studying abroad as a student in France, and one of the people in our cohort, right? She's a character in the story, but don't think bad things about her. She's a wonderful person. She was super into the fact that we had to dress like French people because otherwise people would know that we were not French. And we were all working on this and so on and so forth. This is just a couple of days. It's not like a long time in my life. And I remember I woke up one day and I was like, this makes no sense, because the minute I open my mouth, people are going to know that I'm not French, because I'm not French. That's like the true story. Like, I'm here to learn and be as good as I can. But the true thing is that I'm not Parisian.
No.
I'm not a native speaker. And so I'm not going to pressure myself to dress like something I'm not.
What a great example. So true. Okay, you mentioned this, and I have a note about this, that you started your career in journalism, and then you went
Yep.
on to a financial software startup, and then from there you left corporate America to focus on family. So I gave a summary.
Yep.
Now, I'd love for you to walk me, the audience, through what that time in your life looked like up to now, because you also have a step parent success school, and I am also a step parent, and
Okay.
so and there's a whole conversation to be had about step
Yeah.
parenting. And so, and I was loving that you started the success school and you have this bit. So anyway, start with journalism, end at success school, and you take it from there.
All right. So this question is so much easier to answer when you're 25 than when you're 52. Like, cause it's like, the world is not, people are like, tell us what you do in 5 words. And you're like, well, once upon a time, I was a little girl. And then, but yeah, I studied journalism. If you had met me when I was in high school, I was living in the darkroom, developing film, and my dad was in television. So I decided to study journalism. And my specialty was photography, still photography. My dream was to be a sports photographer, and I then didn't actually end up doing that because I moved to Miami. I was what is called a stringer or a freelancer for the local paper, and I also worked at a coffee shop because I had this unflinching desire to be able to pay my bills, and that ended up with me applying to a job that they hired me for my writing, not my photography. So I got a job with a .com startup. So in hindsight, what it is, it's a financial tech company, and I was lucky enough to be a pre-IPO employee. Like, so this is the mid '90s when .com was the thing, and it was like jumping onto the caboose of a train that was super fun, right? Super fun being in a startup. Being in a startup is so much like being in a newsroom. It's like all hands on deck. Everybody do these things, and I worked there, and it was a fantastic experience. And then I got married, and I did not pre-plan the leave the workforce to focus on my family. I am always upfront with people about this, that this was what I call one of those red book moments where I was like, oh my God, I didn't realize this is what the world was like. But because I was my first kid was the third kid in our family. My second kid was the fourth. It was a really, really busy house. And it didn't work together. I made this very stunning realization that there is not a job out there that matches the preschool or daycare schedule. Nobody is going to hire you to earn 6 figures to work from 10 to 11, 15, 3 days a week that are not taken up by holidays and shows and the illnesses, right? And that's my hopefully quirky way of explaining that's the reality of being a woman in the modern workforce. It's not that people don't make it work. Millions of women do make it work, but there are sacrifices on either side. And for me, with our family, what it ended up is that I was at home. So I very quickly, because I was a photographer, I was taking pictures of my kids that turned into a brick and mortar portrait studio for 8 years. It's the only time I've ever started a business that grew on its own. I tell business owners, everybody needs to have one business that grows so fast that gives you the illusion that you know what the hell you're doing. But yeah, so I did that. That was super fun. That changed with the prevalence of the iPhone and digital printing. And then I did what so many of us do. I signed up for self-development entrepreneurial courses, and they were like, what's something that you can teach that other people need to know? And I filled out I went into this with such a chip on my shoulder for this worksheet. This was literally a worksheet somebody handed me. What are the questions people ask you? What's something that anyway, all of those things. I had a total chip on my shoulder, true story, but I had paid all this money to be in this course, and I was like, fine, I'll do this. And so the worksheet sat on my desk, and I worked on it a little bit every day, and all of these things. I asked my husband, one of the suggestions was, ask your husband, these questions. My husband very astutely was like, I'm not answering these questions. This is not good for our marriage. Anyway, right. I was like, this is one of those examples. It's like, oh, not everybody has access to a person to have this conversation. But I filled out this worksheet. I looked down, what are the questions people ask you? What are the things people talk to you about in confidence? Like all of those things. And they were all things about my very, my very public but non-traditional family. Like I was a stepmom and people knew it. I had stepkids and my husband had been divorced and all these things. And like we said, like there's no way for me to hide that. Like everybody knew. So people would call and ask me questions like, how did you do it with 4 kids? Like, how did you? And so I was like, oh, maybe that's the thing. Maybe I'll talk to people about this. And so I built resources and I did coaching for a while. And the resources out there, I wrote a book called Blend, the 10 Lessons I Learned from 20 Years of Being a Stepmom. That is on Amazon. People read it all the time. I put it into a course that is still out there, Step Parents Success School. And that is good. Like people still reach out and they're like, yeah, this is helpful because, and the framework of that, just so that everybody's clear, is I don't do instruction on like, how I think anybody should be an adult or a step parent, but it's the things that I did that helped me be happy and content in my life as a step parent, like how to boundaries. Like being a step parent is, a master level course in detachment, disengagement, and boundaries from love for yourself, love for your family, accepting the things that you cannot change. You cannot change that these people in your life have other parents. Right? That is unchangeable, right? You have to accept that in order to do it and figure out how you're going to live your life. And step parenting, even though like I could rant on this, Tony, for hours, even though 4 out of 10 adults will probably identify as being a step parent or a bonus parent, it is not supported. It is totally, you have to go through a course to be a foster parent, but you can become a step parent just overnight. There's no, it's like there's no support. So anyway, that's how I got there. Then I will say this. Coaching step parents and building a step parent course is not a formula for paving the roads in gold in your own, professional life. It's also a pretty emotional lift, like talking to step parents all day long, right? Yeah. Pretty emotional lift. And from that came this idea of the art of imperfect adulting, being on the side of transition, talking to people about being able to talk about people about change in their life and do something that wasn't so rooted in pain all day long. I'm back to my roots. I woke up one day and I realized that if you drop me on a desert island, what I'm going to do is talk to people about their stories, put it in a newsletter, put it in a podcast, and send it out. And I was like, oh, maybe I should just actually see if I can make that the business.
And you made it the business.
I made it the business.
So there's so much I relate to in everything you said, but the thing that sticks out, and I think you're episode 220 that I'm recording right now.
Wow.
Yeah. And I only say that because what I'm about ready to say next is pretty interesting. In 220 episodes, blending families has probably come up only once, but not the way you and I are about ready to talk about it. I've been a stepmom twice, two different. So I'm on my hat trick husband. I say that out of humor and love. Third time's a charm husband. And so what's interesting, my second husband and his daughter, which was my stepdaughter, and my current husband and I, he had his daughter. They're the exact same age, the girls were. And so I went, and I have my own 2 biological children. So I went from having 3 to having 3 and both girls. I learned so much of what not to do the first time I was a stepmom. And it is everything you said. Boundaries, expectations, things you can't change, loving from afar. And I did it totally different this time. And I got to tell you, it's night and day.
It's night and day. Yeah. And one of the things that used to come up when I was coaching people directly, about half the people I would coach had not gotten married and not had kids together. So it was like the pre-stage. And my advice and my coaching was so different based on whether or not you had already made the commitment. Because and this probably leads to why I talk to people about making decisions now and the choices you make. It's like what you're going to do is very different once you've already, created little people with somebody. Because once you've created little people with somebody, you're tied to that person, whether you're married to them or not. It doesn't matter whether you live on the same state or same continent, you're tied to that person through the relationship, right? And not, I mean, there's some exceptions, obviously, right? Because there are people who bow out of children's lives completely. But generally speaking, that's like a bond that doesn't get undone. And so that's when you find yourself in these conversations where it's like, oh my God, it doesn't matter what I do. This is just the situation. Like, there's no version of my life with my husband that doesn't include his first children. Like, if I spend all day long thinking, when they turn 18, it'll be over, or I wish they weren't there, or if only they weren't a part of my life, those are all like live on Mars scenarios. Like, you just create. Yeah. So, I mean, that realization was not easy for me, but so, like the question of, do you want to do this, and making that decision is so different than what are you going to do now that you're in this situation. Like, if the house is on fire, you have to deal with the fact that you're in a house that's on fire.
Yes.
Yeah.
I learned so many of those lessons by doing it wrong the first time.
Is there any other way? Even if somebody tells you, a lot of times, right, that's how we learn it. Like, and then you're sitting there living it, and you're like, oh, right, this feels, yeah, that was the lesson. Crap,
It was, and I have I don't carry a lot of regrets in my life, but I know that I just was not the best stepmom for that daughter. And
yeah, you were the best you could be then, though.
Exactly. And I've had I've such a great relationship with, I mean, I just call her my daughter now, but it's through learning, and then through my marriage now, explaining to my husband, like, listen, I know you've only, like, this is your first time being a stepdad, but here's what I learned when I fucked it all up. So just, in terms of that part. And we've really done a great job at communicating, and him being willing to listen to my experience there, because it can really wreak havoc on a marriage.
Gosh. So yeah, so one of the lesson that I give people, if anybody is listening to this as a step parent or a parent or anybody, like the frame that I was using a lot of time, and I didn't know it for years and years and years, was that I would judge my actions sort of with like, am I adding to chaos, or am I creating calm and security in the family? And I mean, it was decades before I would have had the words to explain it. But it was like, do I want to have this fight? Do I need to be right? Do I, need to be in control of the situation? Or is it better for the kids in this situation? Because kids need adults, right? For me to, do something different and, not have the fight here, or talk to my husband offline or whatever. I will say, one of the things, like you and I both, what we do is we share personal stories of lived experience. One of the things that fascinates me about modern life is that there is no shortage of expert advice, right? You can basically speak a question into the air, and it's like, David Price from Harvard says this is the answer to happiness, right? That is completely different from having somebody say, oh, it was so painful when I did this. Let me tell you what happened. Or the flip side, which we'd prefer, right? Which, it worked so well when I preheated the oven and then my French fries were crispy, right? The lesson of what people have actually done is still so hard to find. And it's so important, because people can tell you, and this is a story from my own life that I share all the time. My therapist was like, you need to detach and disengage. And I like looked at him and was like, after weeks and weeks, and was like, I don't actually understand what those words mean. Like, I hear you saying them. I've read the definition. I've read the books you've told me to read. What am I supposed to do? Mm-hmm. And he was like, don't talk back, like walk into the other room, like walk away from the conflict, like leave the situation, don't add to the fight. And I was like, what? I didn't even know that was an option. I thought I had to answer. I thought that I had to do these things. It wasn't all instant success, because like I tried that, right, and I walked away, and the other person that was in the conflict had legs and an opinion and just followed me into the other room. So that's the reason that it's important to talk to people who've actually tried to do this in a house, and not people who went to school and studied it only. Like both of those things are important.
Absolutely. Okay. we're going to change gears because I've
Okay.
been excited once I learned this about you. And I don't think you and I talked about this when we were interviewed, but listen, I'm in perimenopause and who knows what the heck happens half the time. So you've done 7 Ironmans.
I have. I have.
I've done 2.
There you go. Which ones would you do? Wisconsin because you live in Wisconsin?
No. I did Chattanooga.
I did Chattanooga.
And Louisville.
Okay, so I did Chattanooga, and Louisville is my one DNF. It was 35 degrees 2018 when I started Louisville, and I had a plan for that, but it was not a good plan. And so halfway through the bike, I was like, I am not having a good time. And so I just did that one loop and was like, all done. Yeah. But yeah, 7.
Hang on a minute. So in 2018, so I did it in 2013, Louisville.
Okay, that was, yeah.
It was like 100 degrees that day.
Yeah, I think at some point they moved it. So mine was in the fall.
That's right. Okay, because I'm like, and it was, 100 degrees.
Yeah,
that was like
it was famously hot.
Yeah.
Right, it was famously hot. I would have been better at that. I did okay with the hot races because I was living in Miami and I knew how to do that. But cold, I didn't know. Like it was like I tried to make a plan, but I didn't have like any of the right things. I went back from Louisville and was like, all right, I'll buy rain pants and gloves and a different jacket that are still in my closet. I've never used them.
So of the 7 you've done, Amy, which one was your favorite?
So I do 2. When people ask me this question, the very first one I did was Ironman France. And so that was spectacular. It's still the most beautiful bike course I've ever done. Right. So that's that. But you can't compare, and then the next one is Lake Placid. Lake Placid, spectacular race.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, my ex-husband, he and I were the ones that did Ironmans together. And we had this rule that if one was doing a race that year, the other one wasn't. We weren't training for a full at the same time.
Right.
Just because you had to keep the plates spinning at home. And so like I would do halves, or you ran several marathons, as did I. Once you're in the endurance sport world, it's like, oh, I'll go run a half or a full and all the things. And so I want to know, did you, in addition, you had 15 marathons is what you...
Yeah, probably a few more now, but yeah.
Okay, so that's my question. Are you still in the sport of endurance athletics?
So I'm going to say no at the moment because the answer is really no. So I got, when I got COVID, I got that aerobic intolerance side effect that some people get, which is which was really hard for me to deal with. Like, so they tell you when you're recovering, it's like, really take it easy. Like that's the advice for everybody. But for like 18 months, anytime I got even into zone 2, I felt like I had just finished a marathon. It was like a really unpleasant experience. It has gone away. But that did have the impact of like, I'm out of shape by endurance standards. So it is my intention to go back and do some more of the Marathon Masters because they're fun to do, even though they're annoyingly hard to get into now. Because I do like that and I think it's fun. But at the moment, I just do like my 25 miles of running a week. After I stopped Ironman training, the thing that I stopped doing completely was swimming. It was like I swam in the ocean for like a while, and now I float. People are like, "Do you want to swim a mile?" I'm like, "No, I do not." So I would like to get back to it, but the last thing I did, I did a couple half marathons, but I mean, I don't like to do them when I'm totally out of shape and they're not fun. I don't have any goals of like achieving any math things. I will say this is one of those, like, now I understand people in my life better. When I was in my 20s training for marathons, and was like super into it, and I would hear people say, they're like, "Oh, I'm just here to do my miles." I was like, those people are lying. They have goals. I know they do. But now here I am. I'm like, no, I hike tomorrow, which would be my long run day. Instead, I'm going to go do yoga because I'm in Denver and I can do yoga at the Red Rocks. And I don't have any pressure because there is not a race on my calendar. I do very much miss it. And so I will get back to it, but yeah.
And for anyone who doesn't know what the heck we're talking about, Ironman is a triathlon.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. It's 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile bike, except if you do Chattanooga, it's 116.
Right.
And maybe some of the other races. And then you run a marathon, 26.2 miles. So you're traveling 140 0.6 miles, and you have, depending on the race, what is it, 17 hours to finish
17
it?
hours. Yeah. 15, 16, 17 hours. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. The famous one is in Hawaii, but
Yeah.
and that's why I was chasing that like legacy thing for a while. And then I was like, ugh, I don't care because, I was like, yeah, no, I've revised this goal. I want to, if I, at this point, if I go to Kona, like I want to go to the, thank God I'm not racing party and cheer other people on.
Yeah, it is really fun to go to races. I was
Yeah.
saying my ex-husband did Ironman Wisconsin. I volunteered, I cheered. It was so much fun not to
Yeah.
have that pressure. And then he did Cozumel,
Oh
and
yeah. That's a fun race.
he ended up DNFing that one halfway through the marathon. He only had 13 miles to go after all that and DNF'd, and but it is
It's
so much
very
fun.
hard.
That one's windy.
Yes, that is the answer. But this is one of those situations where it's like 110 people can tell you it's going to be windy. You don't understand the wind until you're there.
And I don't know about you, but I hated the wind more than any other element. Like I could handle almost anything, but the wind, and I'd be on my bike and listen, I swear on my podcast, so if anyone's offended, but I'd be like, fuck you, wind. And I'd be like saying that on my bike in my aero bars. And it made me so mad. I need to know, do you have Iron Man tattoos? I'm holding mine up.
I do. I have one on my ankle, so I'm not going to put my foot up on the screen. But yeah,
No.
I have one on my ankle, which, is on the inside. And, traditionally people put it on the back of their calf for other athletes to see. And I was like, no, this is for me. So that when I'm 92 years old and, trying to like navigate life, I can remind myself of the things I've done.
That's exactly why I was like,
Yeah.
I'm not doing. So I wrote Iron Man for the first
There
one.
you go. 144.
And 144.6 for Chattanooga, because it was the extra 4 miles. And by the way, everyone, an extra 4 miles on the bike. When I signed up, I'm like, what's 4 more miles? Oh my Lord, 4 more miles sucked.
Yeah. If you would like to buy a cheap triathlon bike, show up at the end of the bike course at any Ironman, because all of the bikes are for sale at that very moment. It's like, never want to see it again.
You'll get
Take
a good
it.
deal. You'll
Right,
get a good
exactly.
deal. Because these bikes are not cheap.
Right, exactly. It's like, get me off of here. I'm never doing this again. Yes.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I want to know, let's talk about women specifically.
Yeah.
And the name of my podcast is Women in ... The reason for the dots is because originally I was going to talk about women in sports, because that's what I do in my day job. And I'm very much a minority in men's professional hockey. And I really wanted to lift women up. And I thought, I can still do that, but I don't need to just do sports. And we're more than our occupation. So I kick out the word sports. And then I'm like, well, I want to have men on my podcast too, because I have a lot of men in my life that helped me get to where I am today.
Yeah.
There's the word men in women. Men came from women. So I'm like, all right, well, I'll just throw these dots in and that'll call it good. Now, the reason I set this up is because I asked the women this question, which is, how would you fill in those dots for you, Amy? Women in what?
Women in, oh gosh. I think that, I guess I'm maybe just put something really, 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 really broad, like women in the world, or because, we are so much more than any of the little pieces of our life, which is not, I guess that's not really true, but each of the pieces is just like a small part, right? So like when you're in middle school, that's a huge part of your life, but then it ends and you go on to the next thing. And that's why, so you do women in, and it's vague. That's why I chose the word adulting instead of parenting or step parenting or whatever, which came from the very lived experience of being a step parent and, just wanting to be included in the bigger group. Like anytime, and you're a business person and, there's tremendous power in identifying the niche and the specialty. I serve redheads that, are left-handed who sing songs on Thursdays, right?
Yeah.
Super specific, makes everything very easy, but it does also exclude everybody else. Mm-hmm. And so there's a spot not in the branding world, not in the not in the marketing specialization world, but there's a spot in real human life, which is the general pot that we are, we are more than the sub parts of our life. And one of the spots where that's so important, which I think you just said, is that if you cross the line, which I don't know anybody who's been an Ironman or recovery who hasn't done this, where you identify so closely with that one part of your life that it becomes, how you self-identify. When you move out of that section of your life, that can be really, really painful. So that happens to people who leave careers when they retire. That happens to athletes who get injured or who decide that they don't want to do that particular sport anymore. Happens to moms whose kids who move away, all of those things. And it can be really disruptive.
100%. It's such a, God, we could go down a rabbit hole on that too, because Ironman, for example, when I crossed Chattanooga's finish line in 2017, I was 39 years old, and I would have, I was rounding the corner into 40, and I'm like, I knew I was done.
Yeah.
I listened to my instinct, just like I knew I was done with drinking when I was like, and that was harder. Like, it's easier to stop training for an Ironman, I think, than it's to quit drinking. But I was like, I just listened. And I think that, for me, that came with age and experience and all the things. So, yeah.
Yeah. And they have the very similar challenges sometimes, right? So like, I am not the recovery expert, you are. But people talk about the challenge of, their social community is built around that. Same thing with me and Ironman. Ironman training takes up 15 hours of your week. Like it's like having another job. So like that was my social community. And like for a little while, you still see all those same people. But when you really change and you don't do it, it's like you've quit the gym. Right. And so that's the same challenge of grieving that social circle that used to exist, but doing it with I don't want that anymore. I'm doing this because I don't want it. And then doing the work of recreating, the support circle that you want in your life. And that also happens with retirement. That happens. I mean, there are people out there that have the same social circle from 7 years old to when they are in the, it is a beautiful thing. That has not been my life.
Me neither.
Yeah. So, And I think that, right, exactly. Right. And, And so for me, I was listening to a podcast several months ago. Somebody very smart wrote a book, and she was like, no, we change our friend cycle, every 5 to 7 years, even when we're adults. And I just felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulder. I was like, oh, it means I haven't done anything wrong. This is the way it goes.
So true. Amy, who are the women who have helped you become the woman that sits before me today?
Oh gosh, there's so many. Like you, I gravitated in my early life so my dad was I was raised by a single parent, my dad. I have a lot of men in my life, who opened doors for me. And if you had talked to me when I was 20 and said, hey, will you ever be a person who's running women's communities? I would be like, I don't know. 'Cause all my bosses had been men, that kind of thing. But I naively thought in my 20s that we were working towards, more equity in a lot of things. And we have seen achievement, don't get me wrong, right? But I can see the naivete in what I thought was happening when I was younger now. There's a woman whose name is Susan Hyatt. She's one of the very first life coaches that I hired. And she has been helpful to me in, she's a person who lives her life the way she wants to. And so when you watch her, she's an example of choosing yourself. So she's been helpful to have around me in my life. There are some women in my life, I have some besties, I have some podcasting besties. My podcasting bestie, Candace, who I can text at 3 a.m. She does not reply at 3 a.m. That's a perimenopause thing too, the 3 a.m. wake up call,
Yep.
Oh, that's what am I going to do? But I can text her and she is there to do things at that. There's been a lot of people. I'm not doing a good job of naming them at this one moment, but those are some of the women.
A couple. That's the big ones are really. the the ones I always love my guests to call out. And sometimes they don't have anyone to call out because they're like, it was all men. And I'm like, yeah, I get that too. So,
Well, and I think that that's, with that, right, that is absolutely my lived experience professionally. And I'm thankful for all the men that open doors. But I think there's also, especially right now in the space that I'm in media and like with this podcast, right, the leadership groups of media are all still men. And if women don't, there's not always an opportunity. There's not always a reality that men will actually elevate women to positions of leadership in organizations. Sometimes there are, and sometimes there aren't. But there's a spot to be said where right now today, people like you can start a show and say, what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight and elevate women. And I'm going to work to build the infrastructure and shine the spotlight on other women. And I think that's really important. So they did research. The University of Southern California, Annenberg Grad School did research on podcasts, and this is not perfect data because there is no perfect data, right? But they looked at the top 100 podcasts, interview podcasts, and how many, like, so if the show was hosted by men, the majority of guests were men, but the show, like, it was like 80%. That's not, somebody, I should look up the right number, but then they looked at women hosts, and it was still only like, only 20% of the guests were women. And it was like, so men are giving men the spotlight, but women are also giving men the spotlight, which is not bad, but it does pose the question of like, hey, is there a spot where if we were being more intentional about it and shining a spotlight on more women, it would do the work of lifting up these great voices?
Wow, that is fascinating.
Right.
That's
It is.
fascinating.
Yeah.
I think my split is 75-25. 75 women, 25% men.
Yeah, and the question always goes to, are you throwing men under the bus? No, I wouldn't be here today without my dad and all of those things. Okay. But you just, I mean, if you can do it, it's like if you can pay the artist in cash, like pay them in cash. If you can highlight a woman, highlight a woman.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That was really so fascinating. Okay. I want to ask you a fun question, then we'll wrap it up.
Yes.
All right. I have so many fun ones. I'm going to go with expiration dates. I believe there are two types of people in this world. And I need to know, if you open the refrigerator and you're grabbing a bottle of salad dressing out, I don't care which kind, and you look at the expiration date and it's like 2 days past expiration date or more, are you going to use it or are you throwing it out?
If it has vinegar in it, I am going to use it, no.
Anything else? Fine. You're like, nope, it's gone.
If it's a dairy product, like if it's like milk, I'm like going to be, because spoiled milk is one of the grossest things in the world, So like I'll be like checking it, sniffing it, and yeah, I like okay. So. Yeah.
But this started with my husband and I, because he'll like, if it's anything, if it's 1 second past, it's garbage. Me?
Generally, yeah. No, generally, I think that expiration dates are something to be considered. But then, like if it's a cold cut, like if it's deli meat, I'm not going to use it past it because it's like I don't want listeria, but yeah. Yeah, but mostly,
I'll eat
right.
it.
Right, exactly. It depends on how often you've had food poisoning. Is probably like the because that.
Lucky.
Yeah, see, and I have not.
I dodged a bullet somehow.
Yes, but yeah, exactly. Like I'm like, all right,
All right, I got one more fun one. Okay, you travel, flying. We're talking about flying, and again, I believe there's two types of people in this world: those who check bags and those who only take a carry-on. Which one are you?
So I mostly am the carry-on, especially if there's a connection. Yeah, like so. But I have also done it. Like I've, flown with my life in duffel bags to move kids into dorms and things like that. But yeah, no, I am queen of the. I buy the bag. I live out of a very small suitcase. Checking bags. Yeah.
Oh, I'm allergic. I decided I'm allergic to it. So it doesn't matter where I'm going. 2 weeks in Europe, to whatever. I am carry-on only, and I'm borderline crazy because I experimented once this year, and I checked a bag, and everything was fine. Actually, worked out really well. But I got to tell you, I'm like, who wants to do this? Like,
yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. Anyways, so I
But
just
I've
find it
done,
hilarious.
I've done a lot of travel with things like bike boxes and stuff
Yeah.
you have to check, and things like that. But at the same, like, so when I could, I would ship my bike ahead with dry bike transport and
Yep.
then carry it. But then, like you're saying, like anything I needed for the race was in my bag. And like getting on airplane with my friends with our helmets on, because they don't fit in the bags.
But yeah, because you have looked.
Yeah.
That reminds me when I was doing Chattanooga, I forgot to pack my contact lenses.
Oh my
Which
goodness.
you can't, anyway. So I had to call my parents, and they had to overnight them. And this was forever ago, but
My friend
I was
Susan,
good.
my friend Susan Hogg, she once showed up for a race with two like left shoes. Like, like I had to buy new shoes in the expo.
Which is like that, and that's a worse nightmare for a lot of us.
100%. It's like to do a marathon in swollen feet, new shoes. No.
No. Oh, this was so much fun, Amy. Thank you for coming on and sharing your story and your wisdom
Thank you.
and lifting me up and having me on your podcast and part of your world. And I'm cheering you on for everything you're doing.
Thank you.
Where can people connect with you, Amy? Find you? I know you mentioned your book Blend can be purchased on Amazon, but where else can they find you, your podcast, everything you're doing?
So the easiest way to connect with me is to be on my email list. So it's imperfectadulting.com, and you just opt in, and then you get the newsletter. That's where, I'm on social media. I try to be in all of the places, but I put the things that I'm doing and the ways to interact with me into that newsletter.
Perfect. Well, thanks again, and looking forward to seeing what you're doing next in the world.
Thank you.
If you all are looking to connect with me, I'm not hard to find. The hockey side of my life is at kwings.com. And then everything else I'm working on, whether it be the podcast, my coaching, the conference, but the big one, Rebellious Success, my book, is available for pre-order now and drops in mailboxes on August 11th. And I'm on all social media platforms as well. And until next time.